Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. She had skin as white as snow, lips as red as a rose, and hair as black as ebony. Her stepmother, the queen, was very jealous of Snow White's beauty. Every day, she asked her magical mirror who was the fairest of them all. But the mirror would always answer that Snow White was the most beautiful of them all. The queen was furious when she heard this. She called for her huntsman and gave him a terrible task. "Take Snow White into the forest and make sure she never returns," the queen ordered. The huntsman took Snow White deep into the woods, but when he saw her innocent face, he couldn't bring himself to harm her. Instead, he told her to run far away and never look back. Snow White was scared, but she had no choice but to flee. Snow White wandered through the forest, all alone, with no place to go. As she walked deeper into the woods, she found a little cottage. It was small, but cozy, and the door was open. She decided to go inside, hoping to find someone who could help her. The inside was full of tiny furniture, all perfectly arranged. Snow White felt at home, even though she had never been there before. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in a nearby mine. When they came home from work that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White sleeping in one of their beds. They woke her gently, and Snow White told them her story. The dwarfs were kind and promised to protect her from the wicked queen. They gave her a safe place to stay and warned her to be careful. One day, the queen asked her mirror again, "Who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror,
as always, answered,
"Snow White is still the fairest." Furious, the queen realized that Snow White was still alive. She decided to take matters into her own hands. The queen disguised herself as an old woman and made a poisoned apple. She traveled to the cottage where Snow White was hiding. The disguised queen knocked on the door of the cottage and offered Snow White the apple. "It's a lovely apple," she said with a smile. Snow White, unaware of the danger, reached out to take the apple. She bit into it, and immediately she fell into a deep, enchanted sleep. The dwarfs returned home to find Snow White lying lifeless on the floor. They were heartbroken and didn't know what to do. The dwarfs placed Snow White in a glass coffin, hoping that one day she might wake up. Days passed, then weeks, and still Snow White did not stir. One day, a prince who had heard of Snow White's beauty and kindness came to the cottage. He was so moved by her peaceful face that he kissed her gently. Miraculously, Snow White's eyes fluttered open. She was awake! Snow White and the prince looked at each other with joy and love. The prince explained that he had been searching for her for a long time. He had heard the story of her kindness and beauty and had fallen in love with her from afar. Snow White was happy to see him, and they both knew that they were meant to be together. They decided to marry and live happily ever after. Meanwhile, the queen's magical mirror told her that Snow White was alive and had found true love. The queen was furious and tried to cause trouble for Snow White once again, but the power of love and kindness was stronger than the queen's wickedness. Snow White and the prince's love was so pure that nothing could ever separate them. The wedding was grand and beautiful, with many guests from all over the kingdom. Snow White wore a gown of white, and the prince looked dashing in his royal attire. The dwarfs were there too, cheering for their friend. They had helped Snow White when she needed them the most, and now they were all part of the celebration. Snow White and the prince exchanged vows, promising to love and care for each other forever. After the wedding, Snow White and the prince returned to the castle. They ruled the kingdom with kindness and fairness, making sure that everyone was treated with love and respect. The people of the kingdom were happy, knowing that they had a good and just ruler. Snow White's heart was full of gratitude, and she never forgot the kindness of the dwarfs. Years passed, and Snow White and the prince lived in peace and happiness. They had many children, and their kingdom flourished. Snow White never let the darkness of the past overshadow her happiness. She had found true love, and nothing could ever take that away from her. The queen's evil had been defeated, and love had triumphed over all. The story of Snow White and her prince became a legend that was told for generations. Children all over the kingdom would gather to hear the tale of the beautiful princess, who overcame evil with kindness and love. They learned that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Snow White's story gave them hope and courage. And so, Snow White and her prince lived a life filled with joy, love, and peace. They never forgot the lessons they had learned through their trials, and they always remembered to be kind to everyone they met. As they grew old together, they knew that their love had made their kingdom a better place. Their story would live on forever, reminding people of the power of kindness and love. And that, dear children, is the story of Snow White. Always remember, kindness is more powerful than anything else in the world. No matter how difficult life may seem, love will always find a way. Good night, and may you have sweet dreams.